Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Hi, Maddy.
Hey.
I'm sitting here with the lovely Dave and Maddy. We're going to talk about Pygmalion, which is the show that you guys performed at the beginning of March. Choreographed. That's so funny. I'm in dance mode. Directed by James Wallis. So let's start off. We can talk about the characters. You guys played Henry Higgins and Eliza Doolittle, respectively. What was it like to take on a character that is so opinionated in their mind and sort of set in what they were trying to say?
For me, it was difficult to get into that world because Higgins is a lot older than I actually am.
Right.
And he just comes from a different worldview. And it's, I think, essentially Shaw's worldview in a lot of ways. And to Shaw, I know he thought of Higgins as the protagonist to this play.
Right.
And when we were in the rehearsal room, James Wallis, our director, wanted us to outline what our Pygmalion was going to be. And we all agreed that Eliza was the protagonist of this story, which is really interesting because Shaw himself would not have seen it that way,
right.
It seems.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was discovering for myself what Higgins is today as opposed to what he has been, because I think that drastically changes the story.
Yeah, and I think that changed because the audience has changed. Because this play came out in 1912.
Yeah,
and
totally different audience.
Exactly.
Different worldviews,
exactly.
for sure.
And Dave and I were actually, he put it pretty perfectly as the play is about, well, it's primarily about language, but it's also about the idea of what is considered to be knowledge and what is held valuable as knowledge now versus 1912. And I think that's why the protagonist kind of shifts when the play is played today. I don't know. Before I get into Eliza, do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, with Higgins, I mean, today we'd consider him a bully. We would consider him misogynistic. We would
a little bit traditional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he's not necessarily the antagonist either. Like we kind of talked about the antagonist being the social constructs that Eliza has to kind of fight against.
Which is prevalent today, I guess, for women.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's something that makes the play, yeah, exactly, important to be played in a climate like today. But sorry, I cut you off.
No.
Sure.
I think that's why it's worth doing exactly what you two were saying is about Higgins being, I think, essentially trapped by this larger society, but he represents it in a way. And
interesting.
The conclusion that we came to was that Eliza, through this teaching, at the end of it all, gains clarity. Not that and that's a form of knowledge, but not that she really gains social status, not that she gains anything monetarily, but that she gains a sort of simplicity at the end of it. There's this saying, is there's simplicity and then complexity and then the far side of simplicity.
Oh. What would that be?
Well, it's that at the beginning of the play, Eliza goes through a really great transformation. She's a street urchin, and then the world becomes incredibly complex as she tries to navigate her way through her new standing. And by the end of the play, I think perhaps she's achieved a new kind of simplicity.
Yeah. It's an awareness, I think, an awareness of these social constraints, and she's almost faced with more of them now that she has a higher class position, or at least the appearance of that.
Right, yeah. Because I imagine she hasn't really abandoned what she knows from being that street urchin. I think she finds a balance, maybe?
And that's what was interesting about playing Eliza is when I first started to approach the work, I was like, how do I play a character that goes through such a major transformation? You compare it to the beginning and to the end. And then I realized, and this didn't hit me until later on in the process, that her morals don't change, and she doesn't really change.
Right.
She her appearance changes and how she's perceived and the superficial things about her, like the way that she speaks and dresses and so on, changes. And I think also her knowledge changes. She becomes more knowledgeable. I think she's equally as intelligent as she was at the beginning. I think she's very, very intelligent at the beginning, and she's had to kind of fend for herself in a lot of ways, and she's been abandoned and has had to support herself. And so I think that she's very intelligent, but not that knowledgeable necessarily in the beginning. But by the end, she's very knowledgeable and intelligent. So that was a big challenge for me, was thinking about that transformation, even like physically as well. With our movement teacher, we do work with like animals and things for just imaginative exploration. And I was like, oh, like does her animal change or like
cool.
things like that. But I didn't really end up changing that. I kind of just like imagined if her animal became domesticized, like if she like I kind of
like
started
a pet, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
that's very
I
interesting.
used the animal of a raccoon, which actually really helped me with a lot of the physical elements of her, especially in the first two acts. But yeah, just having that kind of like more internalized with the third and fourth, fifth acts.
Yeah, I mean, because she has such a, not only her appearance changes, she has to speak a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Did you start with the Cockney accent, or did you start with her more elegant side? Which one did you play?
I kind of had to. I mean, luckily, our class, the third year class, we got to work with Irene Pauser, who's our voice teacher. She helped us with our accents that we were working on the semester before we started the process. And with her, we started with RP, and then which is received pronunciation, which is the British accent that she has at the end. So the higher class. This is the Queen's speech, which isn't actually how anyone actually speaks in the world, except for royalty. It's just like they created for theater and as like a general British
time period.
A general British accent.
Cool.
And then we moved to Cockney. But as I was working on both of them during this second semester, I kind of would work on them simultaneously, and I would practice shifting between, because the play is 2 hours, yes, but it's a quick shift. There's no way to see her transform. It kind of she goes from one to the other. So I would like be in my home like talking in Cockney and then try to switch to RP and then back.
Good for you, man.
As fast as I could, but yeah.
I think what Eliza and Higgins share, despite their very different standings seemingly on the outside, is their intellect, and they both have a fire that nobody else has around them.
Completely.
And it was really stark for me when we were doing this exercise and movement class, and we were moving, and can't remember why we were moving in the way we were, but
probably elements or something.
It was something like that, and everyone was moving in this way except for me and Maddy. We were the only ones moving in this other way, and that really clicked in for me. It's like Higgins sees something in Eliza, some fire, and he often references God a lot, like a divine fire is the soul that
a higher power
that God has given you. Exactly.
Which Eliza kind of spits on in some ways too. She whenever she talks, which is very brief, but she kind of mocks him for his references to God, which is kind of funny. But yeah, they definitely both have a fire, and we talked a bit about why the ending is so unsatisfying. It's kind of it leaves a weird note, and why they don't end up staying together, or why it doesn't work. Essentially, why they're it's kind of a missed connection, and that's because they both are very driven and stubborn and have this fire about them, and neither of them want to give up any power. And I think that's why, and I think both of them need to be in power at all times.
Yeah, they almost stay at the same height that they did at the beginning, and they kind of, when they meet and butt heads, it's kind of like this feeling of like there's another person that's as, strong-headed as me, or there's like, what do you mean, like you value this in knowledge, or what do you mean that's what your opinion is?
Totally.
And I think that like creates, again, not a very romantic relationship, but a very like partnership almost, because you guys can meet each other. I don't know.
And what's interesting about that is that, I mean, Shaw called this play a romance, and we talked about that with James, why he calls it that, because he goes on in the epilogue, or the sequel rather, and in the he has like a little prequel or prelude, he talks about how it's not a romance between Higgins and Eliza, and there's nothing like that.
Yeah, not at all.
So we talked about why he calls it a romance, and we think maybe it's a romance of language.
Very cool.
For our story, we found it impossible to avoid romance, though, because it's just not the play that Shaw envisioned, the way that we do it now.
Okay.
And I'm sure he'd be quite shocked by how we interpret his stuff now and how we cross out a lot of his stage directions and add our own. And I think the connotation of a romance, whether classical or contemporary, is of some kind of uplifting and not necessarily a happy ending, but that something is gained at the end. And there is a very palpable sense of like, well, so what did we learn? I don't know.
I kind of felt that, I'll be honest. Like, I was a little bit shocked that it ended in that way. Doesn't it end? It ended with you just laughing, sort of, right? And then it just fades to black, and I was thinking, spoiler alert, but I was just thinking, oh, well, but there's something else that they have to address, or like there has to be a romance, there has to be a happy ending. But then I'm like, well, they already kind of finished the story. Like, it does feel like it finished. I don't know. I mean,
and part of the reason why that romance is like unavoidable in our version of the play is because Dave and I are both 20-year-olds. So if the play had been done as Shaw had written it, Dave would be 40 something and I would actually be 20. So the romance wouldn't be. And if you did see romance in that as a contemporary audience, that would be
a little off.
Yeah, there might be something wrong with you then. But, yeah.
How old is Freddie supposed to be?
Freddie's supposed to be around my age, I think.
Okay.
Probably a little bit older.
Because if we're talking romance, like, that would be the only real sort of element to it, would be Freddie and Eliza's relationship.
And it's interesting because figuring that out as well, navigating that, I actually don't think Eliza ever really falls in love with Freddie.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't think she actually ever. I think she needs Freddie in this point in her life, and I think that's part of it is because she has been controlled so much in the past 6 months this play takes place, that she needs to regain some kind of control, and I think Freddie's also the one that stops her from killing herself. So, and I think he was kind of in the right place at the right time and kind of what she needed in that moment.
For sure.
And even in the last scene where we're having this argument, I repeatedly say that, Freddie loves me, but I never say that I love him.
I love him.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, he's very infatuated with Eliza, right? Like, it's,
off the bat.
She sort of acknowledges him and oh, wow, someone's actually looking at me in like a nice way, but it's a kind of unbalanced their love for each other.
I think he loves her because she has this fire that he's never seen. Oh, very cool. And it's so apparent in Act 3 where they first sort of formally meet. She's just got this air that nobody else has. And Freddie's so tightly caged, I think, by his family, by his mother, by his sister.
Norms.
Yeah. Do you maybe think he falls in love with the idea of her rather than her? Potentially,
yeah. I think he also does really love her, though. I think that love is true. And I think Eliza. I think maybe Eliza loves the idea of Freddie.
Right, like someone who's upper class and takes interest in her.
And she's never been involved with anything like that before, and I interpreted that kiss to be her first kiss ever.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah, and she repeatedly says at the beginning of the play, like, I'm a good girl. And I remember, to talk about My Fair Lady, I used to watch My Fair Lady a lot when I was a kid, and I never really understood what that was until reading this play and realizing that there's a lot of connotations to prostitution at the time. So I did a lot of research on that.
Wow.
And that's what that is. I'm a good girl is her challenging that, because the perception of who she is just because she's a lower class woman is that she is a prostitute and she's soliciting essentially. In that first scene, why she goes kind of off the rails a little bit. I had a hard time, like, when I first read that scene, like, without reading the rest of the play, I was like, what, like, what's wrong? Like,
Why is she so
calm
mad?
down,
Yeah.
it's okay.
They just
And
want
the
flowers.
stage directions are great. Like, there was, like, boo-hoos written in there. I'm like, oh my god, what do I do with that? And then it clicked, and then the stakes are so high for her right off the bat because she's used to being labeled as a sex worker, which goes against her morals.
Yeah, because she hasn't done that. I assume she's,
No.
just sort of stayed on the street and done all she could.
I think she's challenged that. I think that she probably knows a lot of women that are sex workers, and not to say there's anything wrong with that today. I think that it's totally a reputable job nowadays. But I think the way it was perceived, and I think also police brutality towards prostitutes at the time, and also now, but back then especially, I think she was very afraid of that. So that's why the first meeting of Higgins is so startling for her, I think.
Right.
And she references that later when she's with Freddie. They're caught making out by a policeman, and Eliza references that it's their job to hunt girls off the streets. So it's clear she has some kind of past experience with that impression of her always being put upon. The assumption that just because she's a lower class woman soliciting, a product for money, and sometimes very cheekily and very on the sly. That there is some kind of there is a stigma.
A little bit of a flirtatious element, because she has to sort of...
And she's always fighting that.
Yeah. Interesting. This is all very deep stuff I actually didn't really think about very much.
Yeah, I know. It took a lot of digging with our director as well. Like,
and what was it like to work with James? What was his...
This was James's first Shaw play that he ever directed. He's a Shakespeare man. He's a graduate of this program, Ryerson, where we study now.
Yeah.
And he's gone on to found his own independent Shakespeare company.
Shakespeare Bashed.
Awesome.
Which focuses on putting Shakespeare in casual settings. And
it's incredible. I highly recommend that you go see their shows.
Yeah, they're the best.
They're so good.
It's
I will definitely
focus
check
on
out.
clear, simple staging and just the words and the play. And so he really has a talent for picking out the words of the play.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that is so difficult sometimes in a Shaw play because it's some kind of mix between heightened and not. And it's, for me, quite a different place from Shakespeare, but also quite different from anything that's written today.
Yeah.
And so he has a really, I think, unique talent for pulling out what's important, calling into question why you say that, what's it for, what are you referencing, and what is your argument? And that's always something we talk about in Shakespeare, like what is the argument of the character? Because scenes in Shakespeare are so focused on their argument.
Right.
This idea versus that idea. And with Shaw, he's also got scenes where Shaw said that the best play that you could ever have was just people sitting in a room debating. That would be the ideal play.
Interesting.
And so in Shaw, there's always like bigger ideas behind each character, and they're banging together in a scene. And so James is really great at pulling that out of the play, out of the text, and bringing it.
I imagine that helped you for your characters because they both have different arguments.
Absolutely.
To the way they see life.
And pretty clear ones too, I think. And we worked with David Jansen from the Shaw Fest on some Shaw before we even got cast in the show at all. But
lovely.
Yeah, and we talked a bit about like Shaw characters having a very strong stance politically, and understanding where they stand politically is like a huge part of being able to wrap your head around the play as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the idea, like when you're in any room in a Shaw play, like where do you stand politically? Where does everyone else stand politically? Like in the scene where I'm in my house, I am the dominant character. I am the one in charge. It's my house. It's a mess because I don't clean anything up. But then I'm at my mother's, and suddenly there's a very different political standpoint going on there. There's my mother, there's her guests, there's Eliza, and we all have these socio-political ideas that are just banging together, and that's what creates the conflict in the scene. That's so great.
And Henry's relationship to his mother is so unhealthy. It's incredibly, very entertaining to watch, I'd say. I don't know what that was like for you.
Yeah, it's something that I wish we had more time to explore. I didn't feel like we had a lot of time to really dig into what that relationship is. And then it was also played by someone who is, in terms of age, my peer.
Right, yeah.
And so that was really interesting. It was actually scary how much she reminds me of my real mother.
No way.
I don't know how she did that, but she managed to pull half of the mannerisms of my mother.
That helped a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And you know, we didn't talk much about where's Henry's father as he passed away, which we thought probably might be the case.
Right.
What's their income like? What was Mrs. Higgins' husband's profession? What is that past like? And it seems that Mrs. Higgins is very much just resigned to be a part of the time. There's a stage direction about her that says she's too old now to worry about dressing nicely or something like that.
Oh, wow. But it's, like that would say class. Wouldn't you want to dress, like,
yeah.
Interesting.
And we talked a lot about where do the Higginses really sit in the class
Yeah.
structure, and where have they sat and where are they now?
Okay.
Now that Mrs. Higgins is perhaps a widow.
Perhaps, yeah.
At least a single mother.
Yes, because we don't see the husband.
And there's no mention of him at all.
Yeah, she's, in her house most of the time, just by herself.
Right.
And then she's like, oh, lovely, Henry's here, like, she almost wants that.
Yeah, but there's definitely a banging together of the ideas, like she's like the old order and Higgins is just like past it all. And that's why their heads butt so much, is because she's raised him a certain way and he has since departed from that.
Oh, yes.
And they fundamentally disagree on some larger look at life. And I think that's why Henry seeks it elsewhere, and that's why Eliza is so appealing. Because his mother, who is not his only family left, he mentions that he has a brother somewhere. But his brother's a clergyman, which I doubt he likes very much.
Yeah, totally opposite.
and it's like, who does he really have? And that's an interesting question that I thought about a lot. And it doesn't really seem like he has his mother. Even though she's around.
And I think that's why there is that kind of glimpse of, or the hope that Eliza and Higgins will be there for each other, because I think they're both extremely lonely.
Right.
I think that's like one of the main driving forces in both of them, because Eliza's relationship with her parents is also quite interesting, because we see her father, which was played by William Flood, and he did an excellent job. And Brianna Wright played Mrs. Higgins, and she was also brilliant. And their relationship is quite clear. I think, though it's pretty explicit that he wasn't a great father for her and isn't a great father. Yeah. And she is now on to her sixth stepmother, which she doesn't like very much either. They don't ever talk about her biological mother. Yeah. So I made up my own little backstory for that. But that's interesting too. So, but I think she's incredibly lonely, and I think she also talks about how she doesn't really have friends. And I think that's the biggest thing for her is walking away from Wimpole Street and from Higgins and Pickering, which is played by Luke Kimball. He did a great job.
Yeah, the whole cast was
very
stellar,
well done. Stellar. Yeah,
we had an awesome team of people.
And I think the hardest part about her walking away from Wimpole Street is walking away from really her only friends in the world, and she says that. She says, you two are the only friends that I have, and I think, and I think that that's why the audience kind of wants Higgins and Eliza to be together, whether it be as friends or romantically or whatever. And I think that's why that's kind of projected onto the characters from the audience's perspective, is because everyone's well aware that they're incredibly lonely.
And even back then it was projected onto them, and that's why Shaw wrote the sequel that explained why that could never be the case. It could never ever be the case in his mind that Eliza and Higgins were together. He even instructed the actor playing Higgins to say his lines in a very platonic way, so as not to insinuate. He says something like, she knows where my things are and reminds me of my appointments, and so forth. And Shaw instructed the actor Herbert Tree to say emphasize and so forth, so that people didn't think that it was
right,
like a
like
wife-husband
ambiguous
situation.
kind of they're starting a romance. Like he
Right.
that idea so shocked him, and I don't know that he ever understood why everyone wanted that ending. And then even there was a whole musical that they made where they changed the ending, right?
I mean, he sprinkles in some kind of I don't know, like that. There's really only one point that I can think, or maybe a couple points, but the main point that I'm thinking of in the play is when Higgins says, as if I ever stopped thinking about the girl, and he says, and her lips and her teeth and her tongue or whatever.
Yes, but
and he's talking about the work.
Talking about the linguistics, right?
Shaw must have seen that from an audience's perspective.
Sure,
that would read as something more, which maybe he wanted that kind of
maybe at the time, I guess. Yeah, platonic seems to be a good word to describe their relationship, but also in a way that they challenge each other to the best of their abilities, right?
Yeah, I think Shaw was interested in a partnership of minds more than a partnership.
I can totally see that.
And to an extent, a partnership of souls,
Yeah.
but not a partnership of bodies.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, he like you said, like she knows where to put his slippers, and like there's that like you see each other every day, kind of familiar family relationship almost, but then they're also very different. To sort of separate that, like you're not each other's family, kind of thing.
And he at one point she's quite unhappy with him, and he offers to adopt her as his daughter.
Right.
Which
shows the age,
Yeah, right. Which always felt kind of silly to say. Yeah. But to us, that's like, what? Like, suddenly you just want to be her father? But we were talking about that, and we kind of came to the conclusion that it's a lot more, it's business-like.
Yeah.
It's transaction more than a relation. And it's not an outreached hand for a relationship. And it's not an olive branch. It's a transaction.
You get something out of her, she gets something out of you.
I think he's also thinking about, okay, but what does she want right now? Like, how can I help her? Because I think he does want her to stay. And I think that Higgins has some, I don't know, I think he has some ideas about what Eliza wants that are just completely off the mark.
Oh, okay.
And that happens kind of throughout the whole play.
Do you think that he figures it out by the end of it? Or
no, I think that's why it doesn't. That's part of the reason why it doesn't work. And she also just like knows that she'll never be free living here. And even in Act 4, there's this line that kind of was supposed to be the hitting point for when I decide to run away from Whipple Street, and that's the line was Pickering could he says with the flower shop he's like,
it was a little while
what
ago.
about having your own flower shop of your own? Pickering could set you up with something, and that's when it's supposed to hit that or dawn on me that I would, even if I were to not necessarily live here but still be connected to them, I would be tied to them essentially. I would never have my own independence, which is something that I think is maybe even her super objective in this whole play is to I guess find a sense of independence.
So meeting Higgins and trying on the new clothes is almost like a platform for her to now go off and do whatever she wants.
Well, the reason why she comes in the first place is because she thinks that economic freedom is equivalent to
happiness,
freedom,
or yes,
and it ends up being that the climbing class actually constricts her freedom even more. She had more freedom when she was poor, not necessarily economic freedom, which she kind of has at the end, but it's almost like what is more valuable.
What's more valuable? Yeah. Wow. To like touch upon that, I mean, you've both done a lot of research. We're looking at your journals here right now, but when we talk about a character feeling independent and making the jump from, okay, I have a problem in my life, I need to find the solution. How did you through, Maddie, you used collages, which was very interesting to me.
Our movement teacher, Philippa Domville, who's brilliant, we love her. She encouraged us to do these kind of collages that were focused around exercises we did in class. So we did like elements,
Lots of
and we
pinks
talked about
and yellows,
fire and stuff, and fireworks.
Was your element fire?
Yeah, it was fire. It started off as a forest fire, and then shifted to fireworks. What was yours?
Oh, it was always some kind of fire.
Some kind of fire.
Thinking of like a volcano.
It
was like
that's erupt.
Ready to erupt. Yeah,
that's
erupts
really
all the time.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that was sort of your inspiration and something that helped
we
you
talk
with
about
that.
all these little avenues of connecting physically with what's going on in the text, which sometimes seems rather foreign, like Maddie was talking about being a raccoon. And I really connected to the idea of a snow leopard. And snow leopards live in complete isolation. I think there's sometimes as few as 4 in every 100 square kilometers in the Asian mountain areas where they live. And when they come into contact, there's almost always a fatal transaction between them. They scent mark their whole territory to notify other snow leopards to not go anywhere near them. Like, I've been here, don't come here.
Okay.
And it's like when 2 snow leopards meet, something's gonna happen. And that's kind of a good way I like to think of this play. Like, 2 snow leopards meet, something's gotta happen.
Something's about to brew.
A way into the work. With my raccoon, like, raccoons are scavengers. She's very crafty. She's a scavenger.
Not afraid to get dirty.
And they kind of do what they need to survive. They grow up in an urban environment a lot of the time, which is what she's kind of like a city animal. And then there were other like little things that I found, like they can communicate with over 200 different sounds and 12 to 15 different calls, which is a lot for an animal like this. Which is there's a lot of just little tidbits of information that you kind of find when you're doing research, because then of course you do research on the time and things as well, the time period, and like I said, research on prostitution in the time period and things like that really affect the work just in a detailed way. And then
that's so admirable. Like, it's different with dance. Like, we don't really have characters, I guess you could say. We don't have like a set time period most of the time. It's just sort of like this new world of movement. So like, hearing all this research that you guys are doing, like, it seems to me that you have to really understand like exactly who these people are
and the circumstances too, I think.
Do you find sometimes you get lost in the character? Did you end up getting lost at this point?
What does that even mean?
Like, I mean, you hear about stories of actors, doing horrible things because their character does horrible things, like, are you method? Yes, yes.
It's very funny. The teachers here kind of condemn anything that's remotely method, because it's also a very like they use a lot in the States, but in UK training and here we kind of steer clear of that because it's so unsafe.
Right.
And also it's just like, can't you just use your imagination and act, like, instead of like I'm going through all this pain in real life so that I can feel pain. It's not really about that. It shouldn't be about that.
Seems like a lot more work almost.
It's just unnecessary. Like, like really what acting it. Well, I don't know if I can boil it down to one thing, but a big part of it is just like, honing your imagination. I think that's the biggest for me anyways. And that, comes out physically and verbally and so on. But we kind of steer clear of method anyway.
For me, that kind of idea of becoming a character, it just isn't that easy for me. What's easiest for me is to hook into what they're saying and why they say it like that. And that, to me, is the best indication of a character. So if a character wants to become king or queen, they can either win their way through charming the whole kingdom,
right,
or they can murder and manipulate their way to the top. And that's character. It's what they do to get what they want.
The action of it, not so much their thoughts.
I guess we never really think about like playing a character, because we kind of learn in first year that there isn't really a character, it's just you up there. And it's you're playing these tactics and active things to affect your scene partner in these circumstances. You're
definitely Marianne.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
In these circumstances. So I never was like, now I'm going to make my voice like this and I'm going to make my body like that. You shouldn't think about the work like that. I think you just kind of think about what would happen to you in these circumstances.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's super inspiring for me. I mean, just coming into that, because I'm wanting to get more into acting, and like hearing you guys talk about that and your different processes is awesome.
Yeah, I guess the biggest way that our processes differ is I like to write a lot of backstories. Just helps me, and I think also the way that our brains probably work when we're working. Dave doesn't really like, a lot of actors actually, especially in our class, don't like to do backstory work. But for me, for some reason, endowing like an object with a backstory, for example, the ring was a big one. I had written like pages and pages on like what that ring meant to me, or my hat.
Wow, an inanimate object, like someone
exactly.
Feel things.
Yeah, so I would write relationships, like stories about my father, about my stepmother, about my hat, about my ring. Like where I think that kind of helps me bring it to. I think it just adds specificity, which is like the easiest thing to hang on, or not the easiest thing to hang on to, but I think what you need in order for your acting to be any good is specificity.
More information.
So exactly. Yeah. It just gives you more information. I know other actors find that they find the work to be convoluted if they try to add in a bunch of like, I don't know, backstory stuff. But
if it works for you though.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And that's what they kind of teach us here at Ryerson, is that like, every single term that we do, it's like, here's another tool for your toolkit. You can throw in the trash after this, or it might be the greatest thing since
but it's
sliced
there.
bread,
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's up for you if you want to use it or not. Just like the movement stuff, like someone might not find improving as a firework to be useful,
sure.
but other people might, find that to be like their way into the work.
Is that similar for you, Dave?
I find for me, I like to start at least with just hooking into the arguments of what's going on and why a character says things and does things the way that they do things. And so for me, like that really attracts me to more classical plays like Shakespeare and Shaw, because often what they're doing and what they're saying is what they think.
It's very like to the point.
It's we talk about how there's no subtext in Shakespeare. Whether you think that's true or not, I like to think of the idea as like you say what you mean, and you mean what you say.
Okay.
And that just it just does the acting for you.
Nice.
And as long as you hook into that argument, and I found the same with this play, you don't have to try to act. You just follow the argument, and it does a lot of the work for you. Now, all this imaginative work, which is just meant to spark your imagination about thinking about how an animal moves, how what an element might look like, that just helps you physicalize a character to spark different ways of approaching how a character moves and how they speak, which is very different from how we speak and move.
Right.
Their accents, the period. That's all some stuff you have to integrate. But once you integrate it and you do that work on your own, you let it go, so that you can just, at the end of the day, when you're on stage, be with your scene partner, be present, and fight to win a scene, to win the argument.
Yeah, you shouldn't be thinking. I just to clarify, I'm not thinking about the backstories as I'm arguing with Dave. Then I would I would go into like some kind of, I'd go have a coma or something. Like I would go into coma. I think like, yeah, it's definitely more about, it is about connecting with the other person and affecting them more than anything else. But yeah, navigating an argument is definitely like, and I think like that's something that makes contemporary text very different than this is the subtext is a lot of the times in contemporary text, characters hardly mean what they say and say what they mean or whatever. And so there's a lot of subtext and silence and things like that, whereas Shaw is they're constantly, and I think that's why there's like these massive chunks of text, which is the thing that is challenging about this. About these plays. This is probably the most text I've ever had for a play in my life. Yeah.
There's so many lines.
Yeah.
And it's most of the time it's just you two talking.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, what's your process for memorizing? Is it similar or different?
It's just in the room, you know,
just
you
doing
just
it.
doing it. Yeah, with your scene partners. You should never really like go, like it's in high school. I used to like take my script and, you know, like close my eyes and like have my hand over the page and then be like, did I get it? Oh no. Like it just means that if you try to memorize like that, you'll memorize the text in a pattern most likely, and it'll be harder for you to connect, and then also it won't be in your body. Yeah, because memorizing like seems like so difficult. I don't know. I've never
to me,
really
it's
done
just
it.
like if you're a dancer, you just have to memorize choreography. If you're a musician, you have to memorize the notes. It's just something you learn by practice, and it's just part of the job.
But as a dancer, like I've got the music that helps me keep a rhythm almost, and like I can like think, okay, this point of the song, I have to do this move. Like you've got, you know, sometimes it's just silence when you're speaking. Like how do you remember all those lines? And then also, you know, you want to be direct on text. You don't want to miss words, and you know, I don't know.
I find even being in the space helps. Like if I'm, and also just like you, I guess your prompt is the other person. Like what they give you in their line is like, oh, that's that idea has to hit me, and that helps, triggers me to say this.
Okay.
And also like I find being in a space helps. Like if I'm really lost and I'm like out to lunch, I'm not connecting, I'm like, okay, well I'm over here by this couch. That means this argument must be coming next because I'm always by this couch when I say that. Right. Like your blocking and your physical score can kind of help with that if you're struggling. But I think it just comes with rehearsal, and I think just like trust as well. Like I never felt like, because even I have to admit, even up to like the shows, I was still like, am I going to forget my lines? Which I've never felt like with a play before, and that was probably the most nerve-wracking thing about this play was just forgetting stuff. But I never felt like Dave or any of my scene partners were gonna, you know, hang me out. What's that saying?
Hang out to dry.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice.
Exactly. Like,
That's
I knew he would catch me if I fell, and I think
lovely.
Having that trust meant that I didn't ever feel like I was even close to falling, which is good.
That's so nice. Yeah. A good like community of people that will be there if you need them.
Exactly.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
These are all great things, guys. I'm so inspired. Let's switch gears. What are you guys doing this summer? What's your next project?
I'm going back to the Shakespeare world that I love so much. I'm directing a production of As You Like It out in the East End of Toronto with a company called Bard in the Park, and it's really wonderful to get the opportunity to just be outdoors doing a play that's set outdoors, and it's just like a big group of young enthusiastic people who just want to put something on and make it great.
Lovely.
That's like my favorite place to be.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah.
We're still all young and we've got so much to learn still.
Yes.
Might as well try.
So I'm looking forward to that, just like having that experience together.
And you're not performing, just directing.
Just directing this time.
That's going to be different, yeah.
Yeah, I've never directed and not performed, so.
Yeah.
But that'll be great. I'm looking forward to that. That's new for me.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It's going to be incredible. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely come.
Yeah. I am currently working on a piece called Mixtape, which is in the New Voices Festival.
Right.
It's written by a fourth-year Margot. She's excellent. And it's a movement piece because my background is in dance. So it's playing on, oh my God, what month is it? Is it March? March 25th and 26th at 9 o'clock, so in Act 2. Come
that's
out
next week.
Yeah, that's oh my God, that's literally Monday.
Get your tickets.
Get your tickets, yeah. But
Very
that
cool.
should be good. And then I'm just, doing some fight intensives and getting my intermediate certification this summer. And
Good
hopefully
for you.
I'm going to Croatia to study Chekhov technique, which Dave did, 2 summers ago?
Yeah, 2 summers ago.
Yeah.
In Croatia, wow.
Yeah.
So like, is Chekhov from Croatia?
No,
why Croatia?
He's Russian, but it's run by an organization called Michael Chekhov Europe, which is actually based in Germany.
Oh, okay.
But they just happened to run this workshop in association with the National Academy of Drama of Croatia.
Hmm.
And they set it in this little town in the Croatian countryside, and it's just a really beautiful week of being in this tiny little walled village in the middle of nowhere in nature, and being with other artists from all around the world, and
wow.
learning this technique together.
Lovely. That's going to be so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, isn't it great to come to go to Europe and study there? I did it this summer, and it was lovely. It was so great. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sitting and talking
Thanks
with
for
me.
having
Thanks for having
us.
us.
Really
So
appreciate
fun.
it.
I could talk about this play all day.